Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, you're in for something dark. Stories pulled from the shadows that most people pretend don't exist. Tonight's one hits different. It's about the Vatican and the things they bury deeper than saints. Imagine this. The most powerful religious institution on Earth has archives stretching 52 miles underground. Real fact. Historians know about the public parts. But what if there's a section no one's mapped since the Renaissance? A place where they lock away the failures of God Himself. And what if they chose you to go down there? Because that's exactly what happened to me. A purple envelope at 3:17 a.m. No stamp. One line in Latin written like blood. Come, the work of God awaits. $10,000 a week to catalog what they call the Forbidden Archive. 7 seals you're never supposed to break. Some whisper. This is based on leaks from archivists who vanished after getting too close. I don't know about that, but I know what I lived through. If a letter like that ever finds you, would you open it or would you run? Smash that like button if you're brave enough to hear how it starts. Subscribe and hit the bell, because once we go down there, there's no coming back up the same. Let's dive in. Chapter 1. The Letter Without a Stamp. It didn't knock. It didn't rattle the chain. It just slid. 3:17 a.m. That witching hour when the world feels thinned out. Like the veil between here and whatever's next is frayed just enough to let something through. Boston was locked in the kind of February freeze that seeps into your bones and stays there. My apartment? A cramped one-bedroom on the 3rd floor of a crumbling triple-decker in Dorchester. The kind of place where the walls are thin and the neighbors argue in languages I don't speak. Heat had been out for weeks. The radiator hissed like it was pissed off, but gave nothing back. I was buried under every blanket I owned, hood up, scrolling job listings on a cracked phone screen that glowed too bright in the dark. $43.19 in my checking account. That's what my life had boiled down to. 43 bucks between me and eating air. I'd been a historian once, specializing in ecclesiastical texts. The kind of obscure Catholic history that gets you weird looks at parties. Masters from Boston College, summa cum laude, the whole deal. But the job market for experts in medieval heresies and suppressed papal bulls is exactly what you'd expect. Non-existent, adjunct gigs dried up, grants vanished. My last paycheck bounced 2 months ago. I was drifting in that half-sleep where regrets play on loop. My mother's funeral. The way the priest droned on while I stared at the crucifix and felt nothing. The ex who left because you're married to dead saints. Elias. When the air shifted, not a draft. Not the wind rattling the loose window pane. Something heavier, like the room had filled with water. Pressure building behind my eyes. Then the sound. A soft, deliberate scrape, paper on wood, right under the door. I froze. The deadbolt was thrown, chain latched. I'd checked them twice before bed, habit from living in a neighborhood where break-ins are Tuesday news. Outside, the storm howled, snow lashing the fire escape like claws. No footsteps in the hall, no elevator ding, nothing. But there it was again. Scrape. Slower this time. Teasing. I sat up, blankets pooling around my waist. heart kicking hard enough to echo in my ears. The only light came from the street lamp outside, sodium orange bleeding through frost-laced blinds, casting bars across the floor like a prison cell. And in that light, I saw it emerge with a corner of purple, not ordinary envelope purple, deep, ecclesiastical violet, the color reserved for Advent penitence, for mourning the sins of the worlds. It kept coming, inch by agonizing inch, until the whole thing lay there on my side of the threshold, flat and waiting. No retreat, no shadow pulling back under the door gap, just delivery. The room smelled different now, faint at first, then overwhelming. Frankincense, thick, cloying, the scent of high masses and funeral parlors where old women clutch rosaries like lifelines, but twisted underneath it, something wet and loamy, like soil turned over in a cemetery at midnight, grave dirt, freshly disturbed. I don't know how long I stared. Minutes bled into each other. The radiator clanked once, a hollow metallic cough, as if warning me. My phone was on the nightstand. I could have called someone. 911. A friend, though I didn't have many left. Hell, even the super. That grumpy old Irish guy who fixed nothing but collected rent like clockwork. But curiosity, or desperation, won. I swung my legs out, bare feet hitting floorboards cold as marble in a crypt. Each step creaked too loud, like the apartment was announcing me. I knelt, fingers trembling, and picked it up. Heavy, luxurious paper, textured like vellum, the kind monks used centuries ago for illuminating manuscripts. The flap sealed with real wax, crimson, still soft and warm to the touch. Embossed in the center, the papal tiara and crossed keys, but wrong. One key snapped clean in half. The break jagged like it had been deliberate violence. I broke the seal. The smell intensified, flooding the room now, clinging to my skin, my clothes. That frankincense grave cocktail made my stomach turn even as it pulled me closer. Hypnotic. Inside, a single sheet of parchment-like paper, folded precisely once, and something else, a plain ticket, crisp and new. I unfolded the letter first, handwritten in flawless uncial script, the kind from early medieval Bibles. Each letter perfect as if traced by a machine that didn't exist back then. Venite, opus Dei expectat, Elias Augustine Cain. Your particular expertise is required in the Archivio Apostolico Segreto. Compensation, $10,000 per week, deposited daily. Absolute discretion mandated. Transportation enclosed. Use the key only when instructed. No signature, just a faint watermark at the bottom. The broken keys again, bleeding slightly into the paper like the ink was still wet. My full name, Augustine, my confirmation saint, chosen because my mother believed in redemption, even for lost causes like her son. The ticket, Alitalia direct from Boston Logan to Rome Fiumicino. Departure 6:45 a.m. that morning, less than 3 hours away. Seat 13A, one way, and the key, brass, ancient, heavy in my palm, tarnished green in spots, engraved with Latin so worn I could barely make it out. Ex tenebris lux, out of darkness, light. But the lux was scratched through. Violent gouges like claws had tried to erase it. I sat back on my heels, envelope in one hand, key in the other. The smell was everywhere now, seeping into the walls, the bed, my lungs. My mind raced. Prank? Some elaborate scam from a former colleague pissed about my thesis on suppressed Gnostic texts? But how did they know my middle name? My exact financial desperation? 10,000 a week, tax-free, probably enough to dig out of the hole, start over, buy time to write the book that could resurrect my career, the one on the Vatican's real hidden histories. The stuff whispered in seminary basements, but never printed. Historians argue about how much is down there, officially. The Vatican Apostolic Archive holds 85 kilometers of shelving, documents from the 8th century onward. But there are rumors, older sections, sealed since the Avignon papacy or earlier, places where even cardinals need special dispensation. A job cataloging forbidden texts? It was like the universe handing me my dream on a silver platter, or a shroud. I should have flushed it, burned the envelope in the sink, scattered the ashes, pretended it never happened, but $43, and that pull, the same one that made me spend years buried in dusty tomes about angels falling and popes damned. I packed one duffel bag, jeans, sweaters, toiletries, my laptop with its cracked screen, the battered notebook where I'd jotted ideas for years, and one book, De Occultis Vaticani, a rare 19th century expose I'd found in a Providence estate sale, the one that got me labeled a conspiracy nut. No note for anyone, no goodbyes. Who would I tell? The storm raged as I locked the door behind me, key turning with a finality that echoed too loud, down the stairs, boots crunching salt and ice. The hallway smelled normal again, cigarettes and boiled cabbage from Mrs. O'Brien's place. Outside, the wind hit like a slap, snow swirling in frantic spirals under streetlights that flickered like dying candles. I hailed a cab, miraculously. One cruised by, tires chains rattling. "Logan," I said, sliding in back, the driver, older guy, Red Sox cap pulled low, nodded without a word. The ride blurred, radio murmuring about flight delays. But when I checked the app, mine was on time, cleared, at the terminal, chaos. People huddled in coats, complaining about cancellations. But international departures? My gate was open, agent waving me through like I was expected. Security barely glanced at the ticket. Safe travels, Mr. Kane. How did she know my name? The plane was half empty, red-eye to Europe in winter, mostly business types in rumpled suits, a cluster of pilgrims with Vatican tour badges already pinned to their jackets. I found 13A, window seat, stowed my bag, buckled in. The cabin lights dimmed for takeoff, engines whined, building to that roar. That's when I noticed every passenger who was reading the exact same thing. Newspapers, tablets, phones, all turned to obituaries. The Boston Globe, page A17, names of the recently departed, black and white photos staring out like accusations. No one flipped pages. No one scrolled. A woman across the aisle traced a finger over a photo, lips moving silently. Prayer or something else? The flight attendant came by, tall, pale skin, almost translucent under the cabin lights. Her uniform impeccable, but something off. A silver cross pinned upside down. Champagne to ease the flight. "Mr. Kane?" Her voice was soft, Eastern European accent, maybe. Her eyes, clouded, milk-white cataracts, like she'd been blind for years. Yet she looked right at me. "The archive appreciates punctuality," she whispered. leaning close enough that I smelled it again, frankincense and grave soil on her breath. She straightened, smile never wavering, and moved on. The plane hurtled down the runway, lifted. Boston fell away below, lights twinkling like distant stars in a dying sky. From the seat behind me, a voice, small, childlike, began to recite Ave Maria, gratia plena. Backwards, word by perfect word, the cabin lights flickered once, and in the reflection of my window, for just a second, the passengers' faces weren't their own. Sunken eyes, gray skin, like corpses dressed for travel. If you're still watching, tell me in the comments. Would you have ignored that envelope? Or are you like me, already too curious for your own good, because we haven't even reached Rome yet, and whatever sent that letter, it's just getting started. Chapter 2, The Door That Isn't on Any Vatican Map. The plane touched down at Fiumicino, just as the sun clawed its way over the horizon, painting the sky the color of dried blood. I hadn't slept. How could I? The backward rosary had stopped sometime over the Atlantic, but the silence that followed felt worse, like the calm before a confession you know will damn you. The milk-eyed attendant never came back. The obituaries stayed open on every lap until the wheels hit tarmac. Then, as if on cue, newspapers folded away like nothing had happened. Customs was a ghost town. My passport scanned without a beep. No questions about the one-way ticket or the brass key burning a hole in my pocket. Just a stamp, hard, official, and I was through, outside. The arrivals hall buzzed with the usual chaos, families reuniting, taxi hawkers shouting in Italian, the smell of espresso cutting through jet fuel fumes. But one man stood apart, tall, black suit that looked pressed from shadow itself. No sign, no name tag, just holding a small card with my name typed in that same uncial script, Ellis Augustine Kane. He didn't speak when I approached, just nodded once, sharp as a guillotine, and turned toward the exit. I followed, duffel slung over my shoulder, the key's weight pulling at my coat like it had grown roots. The car was a nondescript black Mercedes, tinted windows darker than legal. He opened the back door without a word. The interior smelled like polished leather and something faint, old stone, maybe, or candle smoke trapped for centuries. We pulled out into Roman traffic, the city waking up around us. Eternal, they call it, but as we drove, the Colosseum flashing by, the Forum's ruins half buried in morning light. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were heading towards something far older than any emperor's playground. The driver never checked mirrors, never signaled, just wove through streets like he'd done this route in his sleep for decades. We crossed the Tiber, the river sluggish and brown under bridges crammed with saints staring down in judgment. Then into Vatican City through a side gate I'd never seen on any tour map, guarded by Swiss guards who didn't even glance at the car. St. Peter's Square opened up, vast and empty this early, the obelisk in the center pointing like an accusatory finger at the sky. But we didn't stop. The Mercedes veered left, down a ramp I swear wasn't there a second ago, into an underground garage that swallowed us whole. The air changed immediately, cooler, drier, like stepping into a wine cellar that's been sealed since the Renaissance. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in a sickly institutional green. The driver killed the engine, got out, and opened my door. Still no words. He led me through a series of doors, metal, heavy, each one requiring a key card he produced from nowhere, down corridors that sloped gently, the walls shifting from modern concrete to ancient brick, then to rough-hewn tufa stone that looked quarried when Rome was young. The temperature dropped with every step. My breath started fogging. The key in my pocket grew warmer, almost hot against my thigh. We passed side passages branching off into darkness, some barred with iron gates older than America. Faint echoes bounced around, distant drips of water. Or maybe something else. Whispers? No, just my imagination. I told myself, jet lag and paranoia, finally. A door, not grand, not ornate like the bronze portals upstairs that tourists photograph. This one was plain iron, rusted in spots, with a small plaque in Latin so faded I could barely read it. Archivio segretissimo, accessus restrictus. The driver swiped his card. A heavy clunk. The door swung inward on hinges that didn't creak, oiled recently, or maybe never allowed to age. He gestured me through, then left, just turned and walked away, footsteps fading until the corridor swallowed him too. I was alone. The chamber beyond was circular, maybe 30 feet across, domed ceiling lost in shadow high above, no electric lights, just a ring of 7 oil lamps, actual flames flickering in glass chimneys, casting wavering gold on walls lined with shelves, but not books, not yet. These shelves held boxes, lead-lined from the look of them, and scrolls in cases that gleamed like bone. In the center, a simple wooden table, scarred and ancient, with 2 chairs, one occupied. He sat with his back to me at first, hands folded like in prayer, robes black as midnight, frayed at the edges. When he turned, slow, deliberate, my stomach dropped. Old, thus impossibly old, skin like parchment stretched over bone, veins mapping rivers across his cheeks, but the eyes, milk white, clouded over completely, blind, yet they fixed on me exactly, as if seeing deeper than sight. Father Luciano, he said, voice soft as dust settling on a coffin lid, Italian accent, but perfect English underneath. You are punctual, Signor Kane. The archive appreciates that. I stood frozen in the doorway. How do you know your name? A thin smile cracked his face. We know many things here. Sit, please. I did. The chair creaked under me, cold wood biting through my jeans, up close. He smelled like the envelope, frankincense laced with that wet earth rot. You are here, he continued, fingers tracing the table's edge as if reading invisible braille. Because of your unique perspective, your thesis on the Gnostic suppressions of the 4th century, the one that suggested certain texts were not lost, but hidden by design. My mouth went dry. That paper had ruined me academically. Accusations of sensationalism, funding pulled. How did you? We read everything, child. Eventually. He tilted his head, those blind eyes unblinking. The Holy See has layers. Elias, the public archive upstairs, 85 kilometers of shelves, as your historians boast, but below, he gestured vaguely around us. This is the Segretissimo, what was sealed when the church decided some truths were too heavy for the faithful. I glanced at the walls. The lamps flickered, shadows dancing like monks in silent procession. And my job, to catalog, photograph, transcribe where needed. The compensation is as promised, wired daily. You may leave at any time, though few do. He reached into his robes and produced a single sheet, thick vellum, like the letter, a contract, simple terms, signature at the bottom. But around us, on 7 iron doors set into the circular wall, doors I'd somehow not noticed until now, hung 7 seals, massive blobs of red wax, each the size of a fist, stamped with symbols I couldn't quite make out in the dim light. They glowed faintly, as if lit from within. "Before you sign," Father Luciano said, voice dropping to a whisper that filled the room anyway. "There are rules, 7 seals for 7 doors. Break one, and what is bound stays bound no longer." He listed them slowly, fingers counting off like rosary beads. First seal, never speak aloud the name of the watcher. It listens. Second, never open the reliquary of the twice-buried Pope alone. Third, if you see the child in cardinal's robes, do not follow. Fourth, refuse food offered after the bells of Compline. Fifth, never read from the reversed Gospels under moonlight. Sixth, if the angels cease their song at matins, pray. Seventh, he paused, smile fading. The 7th is not written. It reveals itself. I laughed. Couldn't help it. Nervous bark that echoed too loud. This is a joke, right? Medieval hazing for the new guy? I mean, come on, seals? Watchers? I've studied church history. Half this stuff is allegory. Superstition from the Inquisition era when they were burning books left and right. Father Luciano didn't laugh, didn't even blink those dead eyes. "Superstition," he repeated, tasting the word, like the cadaver synod of 897 when they dug up Pope Formosus and put his corpse on trial. Historians call that fact now, or the Porziun Cola indulgence. Some say forgiveness bought too cheaply. We call what we guard here necessary. He pushed the contract closer. A fountain pen appeared beside it, black ink swirling like smoke inside the glass. "Sign, Elias. The work awaits." The room felt smaller now, colder. The lamps dimmed just a fraction, or maybe my eyes were adjusting. Those red seals, they pulsed. I swear they did. Like hearts under wax skin. What harm in humoring the old man? 10 grand a week. Catalog some dusty relics. Laugh about the rules later over espresso upstairs. I took the pen. It was warm, too warm. Scratched my name across the bottom. Elias A. Kane. The moment the ink dried, one of the seals, the first one, closest to the table, began to weep. Not melt, weep. Thick drops of crimson sliding down the iron door, pooling on the stone floor. The smell hit like a wave, coppery, fresh. Blood. Father Luciano sighed, almost sad. "The first seal stirs," he whispered. It knows you now." Somewhere deep in the walls, something whispered back, in Latin, my name. If you're still here, tell me in the comments. Would you have signed that contract, or would you have run the second the blood started flowing? Because I didn't. And whatever's behind those doors, it's already saying my name. Chapter 3, First Seal, never speak the name of the watcher. Aloud. The blood stopped dripping almost as soon as it started. Just a thin trail down the iron door, pooling like spilled communion wine before soaking into the stone floor as if the chamber itself was thirsty. Father Luciano didn't move to wipe it, didn't flinch. Those milk-white eyes just stared through me, patient as eternity. "Consider it a welcome," he said finally, voice dry as the parchment on the table. The seals test the new blood. I laughed again, shakier this time, the sound bouncing off the domed ceiling like a mockery. Right, special effects, hidden pipes or something. I've seen haunted houses at Halloween pull better tricks. But my hand trembled when I set the pen down. The ink in my signature looked darker now, thicker, almost wet. Luciano rose slowly, robes whispering over the floor like dry leaves in a crypt. Your workstation is prepared. Door 3. Begin with the palimpsests, the scraped manuscripts from the Laurentian Library transfer. They are fragile. He didn't offer a tour, didn't explain how to navigate the stacks that stretched out from the circular chamber like spokes on a wheel of judgment, just turned and shuffled toward one of the iron doors, the one without a bleeding seal, and vanished through it without opening it fully, like the metal parted for him alone. I was alone again. The lamps flickered, flames dipping low as if bowing. The air tasted metallic now, copper on my tongue from the blood's faint mist. Door 3 was unmarked except for its seal, intact, glowing that sullen red. I approached it, key heavy in my pocket. It wasn't needed. The door swung inward at my touch, hinges silent. Beyond, a long corridor of shelves, not the organized rows I'd expected from upstairs archives. These were chaos, scrolls piled on codices, loose folios stuffed between lead boxes, everything coated in a fine dust that swirled up with my footsteps like disturbed souls. The temperature plummeted further. My breath plumed white. Somewhere distant, water dripped in a steady rhythm. Plop, plop, like a metronome counting down to something I didn't want to name. My workstation was a scarred oak desk at the corridor's first bend, lit by a single green banker's lamp. On it, a digital camera on a tripod, archival gloves, a stack of vellum sheets bound with twine, and a notebook with my name already written on the cover in that same unsheal script. I sat, pulled on the gloves. They were too big, fingers dangling like a child's playing dress-up in a priest's cassock, untied the stack, palimpsests. I'd worked with them in grad school, manuscripts scraped clean and reused because parchment was expensive. Faint traces of older text bleeding through the new, like ghosts refusing to stay buried. The top one was Latin, 14th century by the script, a treatise on angelic hierarchies, standard Thomistic stuff, but underneath, something older, Greek letters ghosting through. Barely visible under UV would reveal them better, but no light here. I angled the desk lamp, traced the faint lines with a gloved finger. Words emerged, not Greek, something else. Angular, almost runic, but with Latin abbreviations mixed in. I read softly at first, just to decipher. Domine, exaudi, vigilis, harmless, prayer fragments, then deeper. The undertext sharpened, a name, not God, not Jesus or Mary, or any saint I'd confessed to as a kid. It was longer, twisted, consonants that hurt to shape. I sounded it out, piecing the syllables like a puzzle from hell. Thera, Vig, Ilanthor, no, closer, Etheravigilanthor. It rolled off my tongue before I could stop it, not loud, just audible in the silence. The drip stopped, and everything stopped. The lamps didn't flicker, they froze, flames straight as arrows. Then a breath, not mine, behind me, warm, impossibly warm in that frozen air, brushing the back of my neck like a lover's exhale, but wrong, wet. Carrying that frankincense grave smell intensified, now mixed with ozone, like lightning in a tomb. I spun. Nothing. Just shelves vanishing into shadow. But the mirrors, wait. Mirrors? There hadn't been any before. Now, hung haphazardly between the stacks, small security mirrors, convex like in convenience stores, reflecting angles you couldn't see directly. In the nearest one, a figure, tall, robes scarlet as fresh arterial blood, cardinal's garb, but ancient, pre-Reformation style, with a galero hat dangling cords like nooses, face hidden in shadow under the wide brim, but watching. The reflection didn't move when I did. I blinked, looked away, looked back, gone, just empty corridor warped in the glass. My pulse thundered in my ears. I laughed it off. Had to. Hallucination. Jet lag plus no sleep, plus that creepy old priest's mind games. I turned back to the palimpsest. The undertext had changed. The name I'd spoken was now bold, inked over the faint traces, as if my voice had summoned it into being, and below it, in fresh script that hadn't been there seconds ago, Elias Augustin Kane, my full name. In blood red, I shoved back from the desk. Chair scraped loud as a scream. The whispers started then, soft, everywhere and nowhere. Ecclesiastical Latin, church Latin, the kind intoned at exorcisms. First faint, like wind through organ pipes, then clearer, Elias, Augustine, Cain. My name, perfect pronunciation, rolled R's, ecclesiastical vowels, but not from one direction, layered, dozens of voices, hundreds, overlapping in a chorus that built like Gregorian chant from the depths. I clapped hands over my ears. Didn't help. The words vibrated in my skull, bones humming with them. I bolted up, camera forgotten, notebook tumbling. The corridor stretched longer now, impossible, but the bend where I'd entered was farther away, shelves multiplying like a nightmare maze. The mirrors were everywhere, dozens now, hundreds, in each. The cardinal, closer, in one, just a silhouette at the edge. In the next, halfway down the reflected hall, in another, right behind my own reflection, scarlet robes filling the glass, hat brim low, no face, just shadow where features should be. But the whispers named me, called me, in Latin older than the Vulgate, phrases I recognized from forbidden texts I'd only skimmed in seminary libraries before getting kicked out. Venite me, filius perdite, come to me, lost son. I ran, footsteps echoing too many, mine and others. Soft-souled, like monks in sandals padding after. The air thickened, hard to breathe. That warm breath on my neck again, closer, carrying words just for me. Locaris nomen meum, nunc audis vocem meam. You spoke my name, now you hear my voice. I slammed into the circular chamber, door banging open. Father Luciano was there, waiting, as if he'd never left. The whispers cut off the instant I crossed the threshold. Silence rushed in like a flood. I gasped, bent over, hands on knees. The bleeding seal had crusted over, flaking like dried scab. Luciano's blind eyes turned toward me. You read aloud, he said, not a question. I didn't mean it was just there, under the text. The first seal is broken. His voice held no surprise, only sorrow. The Watcher wakes. It knows what you sound like now, Elias. It will follow the echo of your voice through the stacks, through the mirrors that weren't there yesterday. Mirrors. He'd said it casually, like he knew. There are no security cameras down here, he continued, stepping closer. His robes didn't rustle. No need. The Watcher sees for us. I straightened, rage cutting through the terror. This is insane. You set me up. That manuscript, it changed. Wrote my name in blood or ink or whatever the hell. Manuscripts here, remember? He tilted his head. Some were written in substances that respond to breath, to voice. You gave it yours. The lamps dimmed. All 7 seals pulsed now, faint, but synchronized, like a heartbeat. From the corridor I'd fled, a reflections in the open door's polished handle, the cardinal, standing at the bend, hat brim lifting just enough, no face, just darkness, and 2 pinpricks of red where eyes should be, watching. Luciano placed a cold hand on my shoulder, fingers like bone. Rule 1 exists because the Watcher was once an angel, cast out not for rebellion, but for watching too closely. It learned names, all of them. Speaking its own binds it to you. Now it will whisper yours until you answer. The red eyes in the reflection blinked, slow, deliberate, and from everywhere, my name again, Elias Augustine Kane, soft as a lover, hungry as sin. Chapter 4, Second Seal, Never Touch the Relics of the Cadaver Synod. The whispers didn't stop after that first night. They followed me like a second shadow, faint during the daylight hours when tourists shuffled overhead in St. Peter's. Their footsteps muffled thunder through layers of stone and sin. But down here, in the Segretissimo, time lost meaning. No windows, no clocks, just the endless flicker of oil lamps and the slow drip of water somewhere counting sins I hadn't committed yet. Father Luciano assigned me new tasks each morning, though morning was whatever hour he appeared, with a fresh stack of horrors wrapped in acid-free paper. He never mentioned the Watcher again, never asked if the mirrors still showed scarlet figures at the edges, but his blind eyes seemed to track them anyway. Head tilting like a dog, hearing whistles no one else could. I avoided the palimpsests after that, stuck to safer work, photographing illuminated manuscripts from the 12th century, transcribing marginalia that cursed heretics in languages half forgotten. The pay hit my account daily, 10,000 wired to an offshore bank I'd never heard of, more money than I'd seen in years. Enough to ignore the way my reflection lagged sometimes in the polished brass of a reliquary. Enough to pretend the whispers were just echoes of old Latin prayers bouncing off walls built when popes still waged war. But the archive doesn't let you pretend for long. It was during one of those endless shifts, hands cramped from gloves, eyes burning from the green lamp's glare, that Lucianus led me deeper than before, past door 3's corridor, through a section where the shelves gave way to niches carved directly into the tufa rock, niches sealed with lead plates, each etched with papal seals long stricken from official records. The Cadaver Synod relics, he said, voice echoing strangely in the narrow space. Pope Formosus. You know the history? Everyone does. If they've studied church scandals, 897 AD, Pope Stephen VI, some say mad with power, others say possessed, ordered Formosus's corpse dug up 9 months after burial, propped the rotting body on a throne in the Lateran Palace, dressed it in papal vestments, put it on trial for crimes the dead man couldn't defend. The cadaver's finger was cut off when it supposedly pointed in accusation, eventually thrown into the Tiber. Historians argue if it was political theater or something darker, whispers of necromancy among the clergy, rituals to bind papal souls. Luciano stopped at a small lead casket, no bigger than a shoebox, nestled in a niche behind iron bars. The seal on it, second seal, was cracked but not broken, red wax flaking like scabbed skin. Photograph only, he instructed, unlocking the bars with a key that screamed in the lock. Do not open, do not touch. The synod's judgment lingers in the bones. He left me there, alone with the thing. The casket was heavier than it looked, dense lead, cold as a grave marker. I set it on a side table under a stronger lamp, camera ready. The surface etched with Formosis's name and the date of the synod, Januarius 897. Standard procedure, exterior shots first, click, click. The flash reflected oddly, like the metal absorbed light instead of bouncing it back. Then the lid. I told myself it was for better angles, for thorough documentation. The archive required interior verification. Luciano had said that once, hadn't he? My gloved fingers found the edge. The seal crumbled at my touch, wax dust sifting like ash from a crematorium. The lid lifted with a sigh, air escaping after centuries sealed. The smell hit first. Not decay, not really. Something sharper, formaldehyde mixed with myrrh, the embalming spices used on holy corpses, and underneath, that familiar frankincense grave rot. Stronger now, like the envelope's scent had been a preview. Inside, the body wasn't whole, just fragments. A section of spine, yellowed vertebrae fused wrong, scraps of vestments clung like dried skin, and the hand, or what was left of it, mummified fingers curled like claws, papal rings still fused to bone from corrosion. But one finger, the index, was severed clean at the knuckle. Historical accounts say it was hacked off during the trial. It twitched, not imagination, not a trick of the lamp. The dried digit uncurled slowly, joint cracking like ice on a winter pond, blackened nail scraping the casket's lead interior. I froze, camera dangling. It moved again, deliberate, dragging across the metal, scratching. Fresh blood welled from nowhere, oozing from the mummified tip, bright and wet. Impossible after 1100 years. Letter by letter to U space P R O X I M U S to Proximus. You are next. The blood steamed in the cold air, spelling perfect Latin in a script that matched the synod records upstairs. The finger kept writing, smearing, looping the words until the casket bottom ran red. My own hands gloved, but I felt it through the latex, went numb, then burning. I dropped the lid. It clanged shut, blood seeping from the edges like the seal had never been there. Stumbled back, ripping off the gloves. My fingers, the tips, index and middle on my right hand, were darkening. Not bruise dark, black, necrotic, spreading from nails inward, skin tightening, veins turning inky under the surface like roots burrowing. Pain followed, sharp, then deep, bone-deep ache, as if something inside was rotting alive. I screamed, or tried. Sound died in the narrow space, swallowed by stone that had heard worse. Footsteps, Luciano, hurrying blind but sure-footed. He arrived as I cradled my hand, black creeping to the first knuckles now. The second seal, he said. No surprise, just that eternal sorrow. For Moses judges the living now, as he was judged. What is this? I thrust my hand at him. The black had reached the joints, skin splitting in fine lines, weeping clear fluid that smelled of old blood. The synod wasn't just politics. Elias, Stephen the Sixth, didn't act alone. Whispers say he consulted advisors, bound to the Pope's soul to his remains, so the dead could try the living who dared unearth old verdicts. He wrapped my hand in cloth torn from his robe, black fabric that drank the light. It spreads if you fight it. Accept the judgment, or cut away the sin. Cut away the fingers. I laughed then, hysterical, tears mixing with snot. You're insane. This is poison, some chemical. Historians still debate if Formosus was innocent. Luciano interrupted, pressing the cloth tighter. The burning eased, but the black held, frozen at the knuckles. Perjury, they said, transference of seas, but the real crime? He crowned a German emperor, threatened Roman primacy. My vision blurred. The casket, lid closed now, seemed to thrum, like something inside knocked once. Knock. From within, the finger, wanting out. I backed away, hand throbbing under the bandage. The whispers returned, not the watcher's chorus this time. One voice, rasping, papal, but wrong, tongue swollen with death. To Proximus, you are next, in the niche's shadow. The lid casket rocked faintly, once, twice, as if the corpse inside was trying to sit up. Chapter 5, Third Seal, Never Follow the Child Cardinal. The black on my fingers didn't spread farther after that night with Formosus's casket, but it didn't fade either. It settled like a verdict. Tips necrotic, nails split and yellowed. The skin around them puckered, as if centuries had passed in hours. Luciano wrapped it tighter in that black cloth, muttering prayers in a dialect that sounded more Aramaic than Latin. The judgment pauses, he said, but never pardons. He gave me thicker gloves, leather, archival quality, and reassigned me to less tactile work. No more opening reliquaries, just transcription now, copying from texts that didn't fight back, or so I thought. The pain dulled to a constant throb, like a toothache in my bones, reminding me with every keystroke that the dead had marked me. I avoided mirrors, the few that remained after the Watcher's games, avoided reflections in polished chalices or the dark gloss of ancient ink pots, because sometimes something else stared back, a hand with too many fingers, or none at all. The whispers evolved too, no longer just my name from the cardinal shadow, now layered with childish giggles, high and echoing, bubbling up from vents I couldn't see, innocent at first, the kind of laugh a kid makes when hiding during a game. But wrong, too echoing, too knowing. I ignored it, buried myself in work. The money kept coming, daily wires that mocked my bank app with their excess. Enough to buy silence from the part of me screaming to run. Rome above was spring now. Tourists flooding the streets with selfies and gelato. Down here, eternal winter, eternal secrets. It started peripherally, a flash of scarlet at the edge of my vision while shelving a 15th century bull on indulgences. Gone when I turned, then clearer, A small figure in the stacks opposite my desk, robes too big, trailing on the floor like spilled blood, a boy's height, hooded, but with the distinctive Camaro, the red cap of a cardinal, fur trimmed, absurd on a child. He'd stand there, just beyond the lamp's pool of light, one tiny hand raised, beckoning, finger curling, come. The first time, I called out, voice cracking in the dry air. Hey, kid, you lost? Nothing, just the giggle, floating from nowhere and everywhere. I reported it to Luciano during one of his visits. He brought weak tea that tasted of ash and herbs I didn't recognize, something to slow the rot. He claimed. A child? His blind eyes narrowed. In cardinal robes? Yeah, small, maybe 8, 9 years old. Keeps waving me over. Luciano's face went stiller than usual. The third seal stirs. Do not follow. The boy was never born to see the light. His eyes were taken so he could guide in the dark. Guide where? I wanted to ask. But the old priest left without another word, robes vanishing through a wall that shouldn't have had a door. The appearances escalated. During a long shift, transcribing a suppressed diary from the Borgia era, rumors of poisons and incest that made my stomach turn, the boy stepped fully into view, not at the edge anymore. Right at my desk's corner, scarlet robes immaculate, embroidered with gold thread that caught the lamp like fresh veins. The Camaro sat jauntily, tassels swaying though no breeze stirred the air. His face, pale, porcelain smooth, a smile played there, sweet as a cherub in a Renaissance fresco, but the eyes, stitched shut, crude X's of black thread, puckered skin pulled tight, no lids, no lashes, just sewn flesh where windows to the soul should be. He raised that hand again, beckoned, come play. The giggle bubbled out, wet, like from a throat full of fluid. I shoved back from the desk, chair toppling. What the hell are you? He turned, graceful, pirouetting on tiny slippers, and walked away, deeper into the stacks, toward a section I'd never explored, where the shelves twisted into unmapped tunnels, walls shifting from brick to raw necropolis stone. Against every instinct, against Luciano's warning echoing in my skull, I followed. The gloves made my blackened fingers clumsy, but adrenaline surged, hot and foolish. The boy stayed just ahead, always in sight but never close enough to touch. His robes whispered over dust, leaving no prints. The corridor narrowed, ceiling lowered until I stooped. The air grew thicker, humid now, laced with formaldehyde's sharp bite, cutting through the ever-present frankincense rot. Lamps? None here, just bioluminescent fungi on the walls, glowing faint blue like corpse light in old sailor tales. The boy led on, humming a nursery rhyme in Latin, something about lambs and altars, deeper. The tunnels branched, labyrinthine, but he never hesitated, turned corners that looped back on themselves, or didn't. Impossible geometry, like the archive breathed and rearranged while I chased. My breath came ragged, the throb in my fingers synced to my heartbeat, black tips tingling as if sensing kin. Finally, a door, not iron this time, wood, ancient oak, swollen with damp, carved with miters and croziers intertwined with umbilical cords. The boy stopped, turned, smiled wider, stitched eyes weeping clear fluid that ran like tears. He pushed the door. It swung inward on silent hinges. The smell hit like a wall, formalin, strong enough to burn nostrils, mixed with that wet earth grave scent and amplified 100-fold. The room beyond, vast, domed like a forgotten chapel, shelves floor to ceiling, but not books, jars, hundreds, thousands, glass vessels of all sizes, lit from below by that same corpse glow fungi, turning the liquid inside amber gold, floating in them, fetuses, not human, not entirely, deformed, limbs twisted, extra digits splayed like accusations, heads too large, eyes bulbous or missing altogether, some with tails, scaled, vestigial, others with skin translucent, veins pulsing faintly though long dead, and on each tiny head a mitre, bishop's hats, miniature, embroidered with papal symbols. Some wore tiny cassocks, fabric floating like drowned banners. Offspring, the boy seemed to say without words. Renaissance popes and their indiscretions. Alexander Sextus and his rumored children with Lucrezia, innocent A8, and the blood transfusions from boys that historians dismiss as myth. Sixtus IV and the Catamites, preserved here, denied baptism, refused souls. Sala de anime refutate, the hall of refuted souls. The boy stepped inside, beckoned one last time. I crossed the threshold. The jars closest reacted, liquid bubbling faintly, tiny hands pressing against glass, some with 6 fingers, webbed, mouths opening in silent screams, bubbles rising, one jar larger than the rest, central, a fetus almost full term, skin mottled purple, wearing a triple tiara, the papal crown. Its stitched eyes matched the boy's. It smiled. The boy turned to me fully now, raised both hands, palms up, innocent, then pointed at my bandaged hand. The black fingers beneath twitched in response. Pain flared, fresh and white hot. He giggled again, louder. The jars joined, bubbling chorus, liquid sloshing as preserved things shifted, stitched eyes weeping faster. He wanted me to see, to understand. These weren't monsters. They were heirs, denied, hidden, waiting for someone to follow. The boy's mouth opened, too wide, unhinging like a snake's. No tongue, just darkness. And from it, my name, not whispered, screamed, in a voice that was 1,000 drowned infants. The jars rattled, glass cracking in hairlines, fluid leaking, pooling on the floor, sticky, warm, smelling of birth and betrayal. I backed away, tripped over nothing, fell hard, blackened fingers splaying in the spill. Where they touched, the liquid soaked in, black spread faster now, up to the palms, veins bulging purple-black. The boy advanced, smiling, stitched face splitting at the seams, thread snapping one by one. If you saw a child with eyes sewn shut, wearing the robes of power, leading you to a room full of what the church rejected before birth, would you follow or would you run, knowing the black in your veins is calling them family? Because he's still down here, waiting at the edge of my vision, and the stitches are starting to itch. Chapter 6, Fourth Seal, Never Eat the Food Offered After Compline. The boy stopped appearing after that night in the Sala delle Anime Refutate. No more scarlet flashes at the corner of my eye. No giggles bubbling from the vents like poisoned wells. Just silence, thicker than before, as if the archive itself was holding its breath. My blackened hand throbbed under the leather gloves Luciano forced on me. The rot paused at the palms, but itching now, like something burrowed deeper, waiting for permission to bloom. I asked for a new workspace, somewhere brighter, with fewer shadows. Luciano complied without question, leading me to a small cell off the main chamber, a monk's room from centuries past, narrow bed, crucifix on the wall that seemed to weep rust from Christ's wounds. Rest here between shifts, he said. The seals tax the body. Rest, as if sleep was possible anymore. The whispers from the watchers still came in waves, my name layered in Latin pleas, but softer now, almost lulling. The cardinal shadow lingered in mirrors less often, content to watch from afar. Even the jars in that hidden hall felt distant, their tiny mitred occupants sinking back into formalin dreams. Hunger replaced them, not normal hunger, the kind that starts as a hollow in the stomach but crawls upward, gnawing at the throat. The mind. The tea Luciano brought tasted like ash water. The bread from the upstairs refectory, when I dared surface for it, was stale, flavorless. My body burned calories fighting the rot in my veins, or so I told myself. The money-wired daily mocked me from my phone screen, untouchable down here, no delivery apps in hell's basement. That's when the trays began. The first night in the cell, I woke to a soft clink outside the door, metal on stone. I sat up, heart kicking, expecting the boy. Or worse, nothing, just a silver tray on the floor, domed lid gleaming in the faint glow from a wall sconce that hadn't been lit when I fell asleep. Food, steam curling from under the lid, carrying scents that made my mouth flood, roasted lamb in rosemary and garlic, fresh bread still warm, a compote of figs and honey that smelled like Tuscan summers I'd never afford. No note, no footsteps retreating. I should have ignored it. Luciano's warnings echoed. Refuse food after Compline, the evening prayer that ends the monastic day. But Compline bells hadn't rung down here in centuries. Had they? My stomach cramped. Hands, gloved, blackened beneath, trembled as I lifted the lid. Perfection arranged like a Renaissance still life, a carafe of red wine, deep as arterial blood. I ate, ravenously, tearing bread with teeth that felt too sharp, lamb melting on my tongue, juices running down my chin, the wine, rich, velvety, with a metallic aftertaste I attributed to the silver goblet. Warmth spread, first real warmth since the plane, eyelids heavy. I crawled back to the bed, tray forgotten outside the door. Sleep took me like a confession, dragged out under torture. The dream began beautifully, St. Peter's Square, but not as I knew it. 1462, under Pope Pius II, the humanist who loved poetry almost as much as power. The obelisk stood central, freshly erected after being hauled from Nero's circus, where martyrs supposedly died. Tourists call it Egyptian. Historians know Caligula stole it, but in the dream, it pulsed, alive. Torches ringed the piazza, flames guttering in a wind that carried chants. Latin, but guttural, pre-Vulgate. Monks in black robes circled the obelisk, hoods low, faces hidden, but their mouths sewn shut? No. Worse, missing, lips excised clean, leaving raw cavities that whistled when they breathed. The silent order, real or dreamed. Whispers say they exist, monks who remove their tongues as penance for sins of slander, or to guard secrets too dangerous for speech. In the dream, they parted, revealing a pit beneath the obelisk's base, excavated, lined with marble that gleamed wet. Children, dozens, naked, pale, eyes wide with trust or terror, led forward by cardinals in scarlet, smiling, benevolent, One boy, no older than the stitched guide, knelt first. A blade flashed, golden, ceremonial. The chant rose, pro renewal ecclesias, for the renewal of the church, blood sprayed, hot, coppery. Even in dream I tasted it, poured over the obelisk's base, soaking into stone that drank greedily. The child's body lowered in, then another and another sacrifices to bind something older than Christianity to the heart of the faith. Rumors from Pius II's era, plagues raging, Ottoman threats, the church desperate. Historians dismiss blood libel as anti-Catholic propaganda, but some texts, suppressed ones, hint at rituals blending pagan and Christian to renew holy ground. The obelisk throbbed, satisfied. I watched from above, floating or dragged. A participant. One monk turned, mouthless face splitting in what might have been a smile, offered me the blade for the next child, who looked like me, young Elias, before doubt, before loss. I woke screaming, or trying. No sound escaped, throat raw, as if I'd swallowed glass. The cell was dark, sconce out. Pain exploded white hot, centered on palms, feet, side. I fumbled for the lamp, flicked it on. Blood, black blood, oozing from wounds that hadn't been there. Stigmata, palms pierced clean through, holes weeping tar-thick fluid that smelled of the wine, the lamb, the grave. Feet, too, arches split, black dripping onto the stone floor in perfect circles, and the side, right ribs, a gash like the Holy Lance, pulsing with each heartbeat. But the wounds formed letters on the palms, backwards Latin, mirrored so a reader facing me would see it right. Dede me agnum, I gave myself as the lamb. On the feet, renovatio per sanguinem, renewal through blood. Side, 1462 Eternus. 1462, eternal. The black blood sustained, crawled, not dripped, crawled across my skin, tracing more words, finer, like tattoos written in reverse. The tray was gone from outside, clean, as if never there. But the taste lingered, meat and wine and something coppery sweet. Footsteps, soft, padding, multiple, the silent order. I heard them at the door, breathing through those lipless voids, wet, whistling inhales. One pushed something under, another tray, domed, steaming, smelling divine. My stomach growled, traitor despite the agony. The wounds burned hotter, spelling fresh pain. On chapter 7, 5th and 6th seals, the night the angels fell silent. The trays came every night after that first one, always after the hour when Compline should have rung, though no bells marked time down here anymore, just the soft clink of silver on stone outside my cell door, like a polite throat clearing from the damned. The domes lifted to reveal feasts that grew more exquisite, truffle-laced risotto that melted like sin, veal so tender it fell apart at a glance. Wines from vineyards, long burned in old wars. Each bite eased the throb in my stigmata, dulled the itch where black blood crusted the wounds into scabs that spelled accusations in reverse. I ate, told myself it was survival. The rot in my hand had crept to the wrist now, veins marbling purple-black under skin that felt too tight, like a glove worn backward. The dreams came fiercer, 1462 bleeding into modern Rome, the obelisk drinking from chalices held by mouthless monks while tourists above snapped photos. Oblivious, children lowered into the pit, their cries muffled by chants that sounded almost like the Mass. Luciano noticed the change. His blind eyes tracked the fresh scabs on my palms when he brought new assignments, transcribing suppressed visions from Fatima, or cataloging relics from the 1970s that smelled of cigarette smoke and desperation. The fourth seal feeds well, he murmured once, tracing a finger over the backward words on my skin. But hunger shared is hunger doubled. He stopped bringing tea, stopped warning. Then came the night he didn't knock. The cell door creaked open on its own, slow, inevitable, like a confessional curtain pulled by unseen hands. Luciano stood there, robes hanging looser than before, as if the fabric itself was wasting away. In his arms, not a tray, but a bundle wrapped in black silk that pulsed faintly, like a heart removed but still beating. "Come," he said, voice stronger than I'd heard it, almost young. The lower levels call. The entity beneath grows restless. I followed. No choice anymore. The food had woven threads through my veins, black blood singing in harmony with whatever waited below. We descended farther than before, past the Sala delle Anime Refutate, where jars bubbled faintly in greeting, tiny mitered faces pressing against glass with stitched smiles, past tunnels that reeked of myrrh and old incense, walls etched with frescoes half scraped away, angels with wings torn, faces blotted out by papal decree, the necropolis, real name for the ancient burial ground under Saint Peter's, layers of Roman tombs, pagan and Christian tangled like lovers in death. Tourists see the sanitized version upstairs, Scavitur with its neat explanations. But here, deeper, where the Vatican built over older gods, binding them with crosses and chains. Luciano led to a chamber I'd never seen, circular, vast, ceiling lost in shadow that moved wrong. In the center, a pit, not excavated clean like an archaeological site, raw. Jagged stone descending into blackness that swallowed lamplight whole. Chained there, visible only in flickers, was something immense, not human, not angel anymore. Wings shredded to bone and membrane, feathers molting in clumps that writhed like worms, body emaciated, ribs protruding like cathedral arches collapsed, chains of gold and iron, melted rosaries, crucifixes forged into links, bound it to the pit's walls, glowing with heat that didn't warm. It breathed, slow, rhythmic, each exhale carrying the scent of scorched feathers and brimstone veiled in incense. "The fallen," Luciano whispered, reverence and fear twisting his voice. "Bound since the schism, since the church decided some angels served better in silence. Historians whisper of it, the Great Western Schism, 1378 to 1417, when popes and anti-popes warred, excommunicating each other into chaos. Some say darker pacts were made to end it, binding celestial rebels to holy ground, feeding them just enough to keep the balance. The fifth and sixth seals hold the chains," Luciano continued, unwrapping the bundle. Inside, 2 orbs of red wax, larger than the others, veined with gold. They weaken. The world above forgets. Plagues return in new forms. Faith fractures. It must be fed. He smashed the fifth seal against the pit's edge, crack like thunder in a tomb. The entity stirred, chains rattled, links glowing white-hot. A sound escaped it, not roar, but song, twisted Gregorian, notes reversed, beautiful and wrong. The temperature plummeted, my stigmata split open afresh. Black blood pattering onto the stone like rain. Luciano smashed the sixth, The song swelled, joined by voices from above. Faint at first, the choirs in St. Peter's, practicing late? No, every church in Rome, every monastery, Gregorian chant rising citywide, the ancient plain song that had echoed for centuries. Then, at exactly 3:33 a.m., I knew without a clock, the number burning behind my eyes like a brand, silence, absolute. The angels fell mute. No chants, no hymns drifting from open windows across the Tiber, Rome, the eternal city of bells and prayer. When voiceless in an instant, the entity laughed, sound like cathedral bells drowning in blood. Above, chaos began. I felt it through the stone, vibrations of panic. Tourists in the basilica screaming as the Sistine Chapel ceiling, Michelangelo's masterpiece, began to weep, not metaphor, real blood, crimson at first, then darkening to black, seeping from the frescoes, from the Delphic Sibyl's eyes, from the damned souls in the Last Judgment, mouths open in eternal scream, pooling on the floor below, spelling in reverse the Pater Noster, the Lord's Prayer, letters forming backward, as if hell itself dictated from beneath, Our Father, who art in heaven, mocked in mirror script, blood bubbling where tourists slipped and fell. Down here, the entity strained, chains groaning, wings unfurling shreds of light that burned cold. Luciano turned to me, face younger now, wrinkles smoothing like time reversing. It needs a tether, a living one, born under the right stars. He led me, dragged me, really to a side alcove, a filing cabinet, modern, 1970s metal, out of place among the ancient stone. Open it. My blackened hand obeyed before I could stop, fingers leaving smears on the handle. Inside, folders, manila, typed labels, one with my name, Elias Augustine Kane, born August 15th, 1978, Feast of the Assumption, conceived under a blood moon. The note said, Mother Unknown, listed as donated to a Boston convent program for unwed girls. Father, redacted, but a symbol beside it, the broken papal keys from my envelope, selected, watched, groomed from afar, a photo clipped inside, me as a child, First Communion, staring at the camera with eyes that already looked lost. The seals chose you long ago, Luciano said, voice echoing the entity's song. Your blood sings the old notes, the reversed ones. The chains snapped, one link, then another. The entity rose, slow, inexorable, wings spreading shadows that had teeth. Black blood poured from my stigmata now, rivers down arms, pooling at my feet, drawn toward the pit, feeding. Chapter 8, the seal they never mentioned, the eighth seal. The entity didn't roar when the chains finally gave. It sighed, a sound like 1,000 cathedrals exhaling at once, relief, hunger, recognition. The wings unfurled fully now, tattered membranes catching non-light that poured from cracks in the ceiling, shadows with weight and teeth. Black blood from my stigmata arced toward it, threads pulled by invisible hands, feeding the thing that had waited since the angels first learned silence could be a weapon. Luciano, no, not Luciano anymore, laughed. The sound peeled years from his face, skin tightening, eyes clearing from milk white to a piercing blue that reflected the pit's glow. You feel it, don't you? Elias? The pull, the song in your veins. I did. The black in my wounds sang harmony now, reversed notes climbing my arms, burrowing toward my heart. the rot from Formosus's judgment, the hunger from the silent order's feasts, the rejected soul's itch from the jars, all converging, building to something that felt like coming home. He dragged me closer to the pit's edge, strength unnatural, fingers like iron under frail skin. The entity's face resolved in the darkness, beautiful once, androgynous, features Michelangelo might have carved if he'd seen Hell's blueprint, but ruined, eyes burned out sockets, leaking starlight that dyed black, mouth a wound smiling too wide. It reached for me, not with hands, chains still held those, but with will. My feet slid forward on blood-slick stone, boots leaving smears that spelled my name backward. The seventh seal was a lie. Luciano, not his name, never was, whispered, breath hot against my ear now, scented with the wine from the trays. A distraction, 7 for the candlesticks, 7 for the trumpets, but revelation was edited, child, cut by hands that feared the 8th. He shoved the 1970s folder into my blackened grip, pages fluttering like dying birds. Read, your prophecy. The text, suppressed apocalypse, attributed to a 12th century abbot excommunicated for celestial heresies, detailed the 8th seal not as wax or chain, but flesh, a living vessel, born on the feast of the Assumption under a blood moon, conceived in shadow, bloodline traced to the schism's pacts, selected to unbind when faith thinned enough for the old songs to reverse, born August 15th, 1978, me. The entity crooned my name, forward and back, layered in voices of every child lowered into the obelisk's pit, every pope judged by his corpse, every angel bound for watching too closely. I was the key, the door, the seal that walked and breathed and ate the poisoned feasts. Luciano released me at the edge. Fulfill it. Let the silence spread. The world above forgets. We will remind them what real faith costs. The entity's wing brushed me, cold fire, feathers like razors wrapped in velvet. Pain exploded, exquisite, as black blood met its essence. My stigmata burst wide, wounds reversing, flesh knitting and tearing in the same breath. But something snapped inside, not surrender, rage, or grace. I don't know. The brass key, the one from the envelope, burning in my pocket since Boston, grew hot enough to brand. I yanked it free, plunged it into my own palm. Through the stigmata hole, black blood hissed, steamed. The entity recoiled, screamed like reversing bells, Rome's silence above shattering, as chants stuttered back to life in panicked fragments. Luciano lunged, face aging again, crumbling to dust mid-reach. No, the vessel cannot. I ran, up through tunnels that shifted, trying to trap me, walls closing like jaws, jars in the sala shattering as rejected souls wailed release. The boy cardinal appeared one last time, stitched eyes bleeding, mouth opening to scream my name, but I barreled through him, scarlet robes dissolving like smoke. The watcher joined the chase, cardinal shadow swelling to fill corridors, red eyes promising eternity in mirrors that cracked and bled. But the key, my key, pulsed now, guiding, brass warming with each step upward, toward light that shouldn't exist down here. St. Peter's tomb, the real one, not the tourist facade. Bones of the fisherman in a crystal casket, guarded by prayers older than the basilica. I collapsed there, pressed the bloodied key to the glass. The bones moved, not much. A finger, Peter's own, twitching in blessing or warning. Strength flooded me. Enough. I smashed the casket, alarm silent in the chaos above. Tourists fleeing blood-weeping ceilings, grabbed a Bible from the altar, hollowed inside, relic space empty, stuffed my phone recording this, voice hoarse, final words, escaped through side passages, only cardinals know, up into the night. Rome screamed, sirens, chants frantic. The obelisk in the square cracked down the middle, black ichor seeping. I made the last train out, night express to nowhere, borders meaningless now. Hollowed Bible under the seat, this recording hidden inside. The entity didn't follow. It didn't need to, because part of it is in me. The black blood sings softer now, waiting. If a purple envelope with no stamp ever slides under your door, burn it. Because some jobs don't hire you, they own you, and the silence is learning new names. The nightmare under the Vatican is sealed again, for now, but whispers reach far, even to Antarctica, where older archives wait under ice that never melts. If you want that story next, comment Antarctica below and subscribe